As you guys know, we are in full Halloween mode. It is that time of year. And for the longest time, I've actually been staring at a bag of concrete that I've had sitting in my corner of my art room, trying to think of the perfect project to use it for. And I think I've actually found it today. So stay tuned, because I'm going to teach you guys how to make your own custom concrete skulls. Let's go. Alright guys, so the first thing we want to do is go ahead and grab that Dollar Tree skull. You might have a different skull, but any kind of plastic skull is going to do for this one. Alright, so the next thing you do is grab a Sharpie and just start marking off a cut line. As you can see, I didn't go directly down the middle of the skull, only because I wanted to cover some of the seam lines that's going to happen when we join these two halves together. And very carefully with the X-Acto knife or some scissors, go ahead and start cutting the skull in half. Here I got an old bowl for mixing because it's concrete time. When mixing this together, I started with about a cup of concrete, then added about a half a cup of water in there. You want to gradually add the water in, just don't put a lot in too fast. Also, when you mix this should have the consistency of peanut butter. That's when you know it's ready to pour. And we got some good old Vaseline here. Check your medicine cabinets. You might have some of this lying around, or you might be able to use some cooking spray. I got this from the Dollar Tree also. All you want to do is just make sure you coat this very, very well. Both halves get into all the grooves. And then you're going to want to start filling this with your concrete mix. Make sure you pack this in really, really tight. That way it gets into all the details so you have a really nice skull. You're probably wondering, why the mess are you using Vaseline in a skull mold? Well, you're going to need something to release this out when it dries. Any kind of lubricant is going to help you pull this out that much easier. So that's why you're going to want to use some Vaseline, some cooking spray, or go buy some actual mold release. This was only $1. Cheap way to go. And lastly, before I filled these up to the brim with concrete, I went ahead and set them outside so they can dry for 24 to 48 hours. Even with the Vaseline, this was not easy to pull out. As you guys can see, I'm struggling here. So I did actually use that knife and kind of went around the edges to break the mold apart from the concrete structure, but it came out okay. And the only thing I'm doing right here is just taking some really coarse sandpaper and sanding down the edges where there was some overspill of concrete. And I'm just going to mix up another batch because we're going to need to join these halves together. Again, just make sure it's about the consistency of peanut butter. And just get a thin layer on both sides. I'm adding a little water here because I heard it helps adhere it better. I don't know, could just be a myth, but I'm gonna go ahead and use it. And just got a thin layer in between. I'm using some rubber bands here to hold these two together while I pack in some more concrete to fill in this big gap. Oh yeah, and as you're filling in this gap here, be sure to move your rubber bands around. That way you can be sure to fill in every part of this surface. Alright, lastly I'm just using my finger to press it all in, and if that doesn't work for you, you can also just get some water on a brush and just lightly go over the outside of your skull or whatever your structure is and just kind of brush away anything that's not even. I found this water really helped smooth out the surface of this skull. So right now I'm just inspecting it to make sure there's no areas that I missed that might need to be plugged in. Everything looks good. So at this point I'm just going to set it down, actually put this one inside the house this time, and let it set for 24 to 48 hours. Alright, so here we are 48 hours later. I'm now removing the rubber bands off. I'm dipping it in water right now just to remove some of the loose gravel that kept falling off the skull face. And now I can move on to my favorite part of all this, where I get to paint this thing. Here I'm just using some white acrylic paint to help blend in both of these colors better. Also used it to bring out the highlights on the teeth. All I'm doing here is just filling in the eyes as well as the nose with some black acrylic paint. And at this point it was looking pretty good, but I wanted to bring out some more details. So I just went in with some gray and started dry brushing over the areas that I really want to show, like the cheekbones and the side of the face. And you don't have to do this step, it's entirely up to you. And if you do get a little heavy-handed like I did in some areas, that's perfectly fine. All you got to do is just go back over those same spots with that same white acrylic paint and just blend it out. And of course, this wouldn't be the Joker without his signature red smile. I'm slapping this on also with some red acrylic paint. I was going for a more messier, blood-stained kind of look, but you guys can definitely paint yours a lot neater if you like. And lastly, don't forget to protect your work with some kind of varnish or a spray sealer. So a few takeaways from this, guys. After letting this thing dry for about 24 to 48 hours, it was still pretty crumbly, which means it had a lot of loose gravel still on it. So I took it and gave it a little skull bath. Even still, I noticed that rocks were still falling off of it. So what I did, which I thought was a good idea at the time, go around it with Mod Podge to try to hold all the rocks together, but quickly found out that if you are planning on painting this, if you rub it at all, paint is gonna stick to the glue and not the actual skull itself. There was a lot of times when I was painting this and it was actually chipping off because the glue was chipping off. So that's a step that I don't recommend you guys do. I found that just painting it, whether it was the acrylic paint or just a spray paint, solved that issue anyway, so it wasn't something I had to do. So with this one mold, I actually casted 2 skull heads using 2 different techniques. The first method is what I use on this guy, where I fill both of the skull halves with cement, then after 24 to 48 hours, join them together in the middle using more concrete. As you guys can see, he really kept his form and his shape. There are a few defects on there, but I mean, what can you expect? But I mean, all in all, using a mold that you got from the Dollar Tree, I don't think it came out too bad. And for the second one, I used the same molds, but I cut a hole in the top of it, then taped around it to make sure none of the concrete could seep out. After filling that mold, I let it sit for 24 to 48 hours, and I pulled out this guy. So as you can see, there are a lot of defects on this guy. For one, the way I laid him down, it caused a dent in the plastic, which means it dried like that also. And 2, I actually pulled him out a little too soon, so the bottom of his chin got chipped off. But all that's repairable. All you need to do is mix up some more concrete. You can fill in that dent and also can rebuild his chin if you like to. But I don't know what to paint him in. Would you guys rather see me paint him as Zombie Captain America or a skeleton Riddler? So I'm gonna go ahead and get ready for my next project, guys. Thanks so much for watching this video. This project's all wrapped up, so I'm heading out, but I'll catch you on the next one. Hey, if you enjoyed that video, you might like some of my other ones. Be sure to check out some of my other paintings as well as my other custom projects.